Hello everyone, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Ted Hulsy. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to our eFolder Expert Series. This webinar series brings together experts from eFolder's staff and the larger partner community for deep dive discussions on key service and technical topics. Today's topic is profiting as your clients move to the cloud. We are joined by Jay McBain, CEO of ChannelEyes. Before we go through today's agenda, let's first cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available to those who registered for the event, and we will post the recorded version to YouTube as well. With over 130 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion for today's event either by streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Your questions are strongly encouraged throughout today's discussion. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end, but you may submit your questions as we go along, and we will try to address them on the fly. Today's webinar follows a logical flow. After introducing our expert guest, Jay will introduce us to his company, ChannelEyes, and give us some insights into how ChannelEyes was built with no on-premises software. We will then go into a discussion about what the cloud means for big and small businesses alike, and how you can build your MSP business around the cloud and profit from it. Next, we will introduce eFolder Cloud Finder and the profit opportunities it presents for MSPs. Finally, we will open the floor to any remaining questions. So now let me introduce Jay. Jay McBain is an accomplished speaker, author, and innovator in the IT industry. He has been named to the top 40 under 40 list by Business Review, the top 20 global channel visionary by Channel Pro, the top 50 global channel influencer by Penton, as well as the top 250 global managed service executives by MSP Mentor. Jay has spent over 21 years. Has spent his 21-year career in various executive roles in sales, marketing, and strategy within IBM, Lenovo, and Autotask. He is currently the CEO of ChannelEyes, who is reinventing the way vendors communicate, engage, and enable their channel partners. Jay currently serves as the Chairman Emeritus of the CompTIA Vendor Advisory Council and Managed Services Community. Jay has a bachelor's degree of commerce, management, information systems, and public administration from the University of Lethbridge in Alberta, Canada. Jay, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, let's do this, Jay. Let me give you keyboard and mouse control and take it away.
Okay, great. Let me see. Okay. So the first thing that, of course, I clicked my mouse twice. The first thing I wanted to do is welcome everyone as well, and to talk a little bit about ChannelEyes. And it's hard to believe that we just celebrated our 4th anniversary, so we've been at this for a little while. Many of you will be familiar with some of the folks at ChannelEyes. My partner and co-founder, Bob Gottgart, founded Autotask, going on, well, this was early 2000s, so it's one of the first SaaS companies, and that's going on 15 years ago now. And so many of our audience today are either aware or use Autotask or ConnectWise or TigerPaw or one of the other PSA systems out there. And part of our cloud story actually is attributed to Bob as well. So I'll tell more about that in a minute. But really, when we started the company, we had a vision on how we were going to use the cloud, and specifically, what big problem we were trying to solve for. And in our world, we're trying to help vendors and distributors, those who have channel partners, work better with you, work better with MSPs, work better with solution providers. And this just isn't in technology; it's in telecom. It's in finance, insurance, healthcare, as well as automotive and the other 28 industries. When you look at partnerships and when you look at driving channel success, it really breaks into 2 audiences. You really want to influence your partners, make sure that everyone's educated, certified, up to speed, motivated, The average channel program, for those that haven't been inside a vendor channel program, has about 75 parts. And I know that Ted is one of the worldwide experts in building channel programs, but managing all of these variables that that seem to be disparate and kind of complex and convoluted, and try to make it easy and obviously for partners have the ability to take advantage. So anyway, on the one side you've got partners and alliances which are really external to you, and you've got to make sure that all those things are happening. We have a product called Channel Candy, which started as a mobile-first platform, and it really extended the portal out to mobile devices. Today it works on smartphones, also tablets and the desktop. But it was really designed with one thing in mind, is that 95% of channel partners and MSPs were no longer going to portals. You don't just log into HP or IBM or Microsoft or Cisco or whoever your partners are, eFolder. A lot of cases, and I know eFolder has higher numbers than this, but CompTIA showed us that 95% of people in a survey were just not doing that on a regular basis. Today's world has become a push world, not a pull world. So you could set up the best portal and the best system in the world, and if nobody comes, you're not able to fulfill your goals and objectives. So if you put that in the palm of your hand and not only enable the communication, but the tools. So if you're able to use configurators, quoting tools, as well as deal registration and all the things that you want to work with that vendor, if that's in the palm of your hand that you can use 24/7, it makes it much more powerful than if it's just a straight web portal that people aren't coming into. The second product really focuses on the internal team. These are the channel account managers who, many of you know who your CAMs are at your key vendors, the people that work with you on deals. These are the people that make sure the program is being executed, any MDF funds or incentives are being paid, all the things that are working well, and this is really, in a lot of cases, your relationship with the vendor. If you look at the way CAMs have worked up till now, you look past the last 30 years, most of them work off a spreadsheet or a pretty antiquated sales process. Most of them don't really use the CRM on a day-to-day or minute-to-minute basis, but they definitely don't really have the tools that a lot of direct selling people have today. A lot of the modern tools, things like predictive analytics, big data, machine learning, guided selling, all these types of things, and these are new technologies, many of them only 18 months old, are helping salespeople with not only who to call, when to call them, what to engage on, and really, help you and help them have better business strategic discussions. Most channel partners are aware, and a lot of them report that they get just numerous calls by CAMs just asking them what they've done for them lately. Hey, what's going on with this deal? I want to update my boss. What's going on here? And they're not strategic, and they don't help anybody's business, and they're a waste of time. We're trying to get past that and get all the conversations to a business level and have all the rest of the stuff happen more automatically. So that product is called Optics. We actually just launched it 60 days ago, so we're right in the throes right now of a major launch, and it's been pretty exciting in terms of some of the early feedback that we're getting. So last thing I'll say about ChannelEyes is the mobile app, and for all the companies that are using it, about 80% of all partner-facing apps that are in the App Store today, either in Apple iOS or Google Play, are running Channel Candy. So we had a real nice first mover advantage, and we've also had some real success by, again, understanding how the channel works and what partners are looking for, and we're looking to do the same on Optics. So that's it in terms of the company and what our mission is. But in terms of the build and what Ted was mentioning, really the subject of this this webinar is how did we build it? And I reflect back to Bob, who built Autotask in the early 2000s, and it was a very early SaaS company, and it was a cloud-based PSA to run a IT solution provider business or an MSP business. At the time, the competitor was, main competitor was ChannelEyes, and it was on premises. There was no SaaS version of it. Also TigerPaw, and there was no SaaS version. So it was really kind of a pioneer in the SaaS space as well as the PSA space. And as you know, ChannelEyes now does have a PSA version in the cloud, and TigerPaw this year has announced a PSA version in the cloud. So, that market itself has evolved, and the cloud was the right way to do that type of software. And what we're learning is that the cloud is the right way to do a lot of different platforms. Salesforce success in the selling world, some of the marketing automation success, obviously some of the developer tools. But as you go up the stack to business productivity and finance and HR and operations, there are SaaS-based tools that aren't, just built for small business or medium business or large business, but really work for all types of businesses and makes, things not only more effective, efficient, but in many cases less expensive for a firm to do. When we started ChannelEyes in 2011, a lot of these tools have reached a maturity level that, we weren't the early adopters that were the guinea pigs. We could slide right into the tools and the integrations and everything else and really look to build a big business on top of the cloud. I mentioned the irony to Ted that I spent 17 years as kind of the face of IBM and Lenovo selling hardware, convincing people that you did need, to spend a lot of money on hardware and build, obviously, backroom type of infrastructure in your organization. I had mentioned Bob at Autotask. He had spent millions and millions of dollars starting Autotask to build a really impressive data center to run the product, because back then there wasn't the Amazons and Microsofts and IBMs and others that hosted with the right performance and price levels. But nowadays we didn't look to build a data center right off the gate. We could use, in our case we used Amazon, but all of the tools, and you see many of the logos that I have up here on the screen under development, we were able to choose a language like Ruby and choose a company like Engine Yard, which sits on top of Amazon and manages the whole thing for us. And as we plugged in all of the different development tools, they obviously integrated and became the basis of our stack. And that is without buying any kind of server to run our organization. It all ran through a browser. As we built out the organization, our next big decision or decisions was our financial system ran on QuickBooks, which most small businesses start that way, and our selling started on Salesforce. And we looked at other CRMs and everything else, and they all have positives and negatives, but we tried to choose the big gorilla in that downstream. We never knew that we would have 61 pieces of software that we pay for, but of all those pieces of software, most of them plug into Salesforce and drive some sort of up or down value, up the funnel or down the funnel value from Salesforce. So as we built out our marketing stack, as we further built out the sales stack, we went in with an eye towards what could integrate with all of the other solutions that we started with. So again, the stack went from development to marketing to sales, and obviously to productivity and finance. And we found ourselves to the point, we looked at each other after a couple of years and said, if the building burnt down, we could all go to the Best Buy or the Apple Store, and we'd be back up and running within an hour. Get us to a browser, and we wouldn't miss a minute of running our company. And that was very different. We had the advantage that obviously we only started 4 years ago, so there was no legacy that we needed to integrate or transition from or transform from. And we got to start fresh. And the decisions we made, we could make with the knowledge that one day this will be a big company, and we want to make sure that everything scales, and we don't end up replacing a bunch of these logos because we just got too big for them or something like that. And by the way, that didn't say that we didn't make mistakes along the way. When we built out our first marketing automation platform, we used a company called Acton because they were cheaper, and we had a big database full of people, so they gave us the right cost structure for a startup. And back then we were writing everything out of our checking accounts, so every dollar was really important to us. But we had to go through a painful transition to Pardot this year. And we could have gone to Marketo, we could have gone to Eloqua, we could have gone anywhere. We chose Pardot because it was closest to Salesforce, but the point is that without choosing the right scalable cloud tool right off the bat, we forced ourselves through a little bit of a painful transition. So when I talk to other cloud companies or other startups who want to save 50 cents by not going with Salesforce or not going with one of the leaders in a certain area, I tend to warn them that you're just going to put yourself through pain a year or two down the road. Okay, so in terms of the cloud itself and how it's shaped up since 2011, one thing you might be asking is how many companies, we call it born in the cloud and raised in the cloud, how many real companies are like us? And I used US data here, but there's not very many. So if you look on the right-hand side, kind of complicated, but on the right-hand side is transformed IT, and that's basically a small, medium, or large business that's completely moved over to the cloud. And in our case, we're part of 5% of small businesses that are in that position. If you look at other small or medium companies in this case, but at the small level, it's pretty even across experimenting with the cloud, using the cloud but in non-critical applications, or running in production but yet not fully transformed. It's pretty even for small business. As you get medium and large, more companies have gone further with the cloud than small business. If you look at those 4 categories across the top, which is kind of the experiment, non-critical, full production, and then transformed, underneath that, and this is for those dialing in today, these are the pieces of business and these are the skills, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But these are the stages of, from education to transition to policy to workflow that you're thinking about as you're engaging these companies at these different stages. These are the types of efforts that are underway, and obviously these are the types of technologies that sit underneath each of those categories. But more to that to come. Looked at it a different way, and I'm not a big fan of throwing big numbers out there, but I wanted to turn it in terms of what is the opportunity for MSPs and channel partners. The idea is today, 78% of SMBs will have fully adopted the cloud by 2020 from 37% today. So that's to say that yes, it's growing very quickly. The year-over-year growth is there. That being said, it's a huge opportunity because the reason it's only 37% today is there's a skill gap. There's a gap in a bunch of different areas around consulting, compliance, the integration skills, the ability to piece it all together end to end. Obviously, small businesses don't have that built in. So as the channel grows in terms of its ability to deliver, obviously these numbers will grow as well. At the bottom, it's just a year over year. It's a 30% growth rate. But more importantly, just in the US, it's $12 billion in services around cloud applications and deployments. So, it's a $12 billion number that's evident not only in 2016, but for the next 5 years, it's predicted that the number's going to grow, at the same clip level. It's a big chunk of revenue. If you break that into your state, your city, your town, your section of town, it's pretty significant in terms of what the small and medium companies around you will be spending externally to make this happen.
So Jay, just want to kind of interject with a question, and I want to remind everybody, if you do have questions, please just drop them into the Q&A log in GoToWebinar. But Jay, so what are the implications for MSPs? With this big shift, is it an opportunity or a threat? And what skills and investments do MSPs need to make to capture this opportunity?
It's a great question. So It's an opportunity and a threat. It depends how you look at it with your own business model. So the threat part of it is that this train is moving. Regardless, I think most people agree that that 37% number today is going to move to 78. So, which basically says that 8 out of 10, small and medium businesses will be fully adopted in the cloud by 2020. I don't think a lot of people question that number. It could be off by, 10, 20% either way, but it doesn't matter. It's to the point where almost every business is going to move this direction. But that's the threat part. I mean, the opportunity part is that they're not equipped to do it. So, if everything stays the same and, the skills and everything that the channel brings to bear, that there's going to be a supply and demand problem. And I have that a little bit later on talking about that direct piece and showing some numbers around it. But to get that to be a reality, small businesses, if you own a flower shop or a daycare, or if you have a dentist office, I mean, you're not going to just go online and learn how to start integrating, a cloud stack. You're going to do what you've always done. When you brought in a printer, when you brought in some new PCs or a PC server, I mean, you're going to get somebody to help you do that. And right now, there's a gap between what the channel can deliver capacity-wise and what the market needs. So that's the opportunity: is the more skills, the more capabilities, and more so, the more capacity that the channel partners and MSPs build around this area, they're going to be able to deliver. And the idea from a profitability point of view is investment dollars that go into skills in this area. And that could be in the designing, building stage. It could be in the provisioning stage. It can be in the deployment stage, compliance, or even the management phase of all of this. All of those skill dollars that are invested in, will be returned and more. And that's really the opportunity statement.
Right, and I guess from personal experience, I mean, I think there's there's at least in my view, kind of a misnomer out there that, just because the workload or the application primarily runs in the cloud, that the world is simplified. I guess the reality is that certain things become simplified, but other things are not so simple. Could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, as a company, a growing company that uses 61 different applications, where are the unanticipated challenges that crop up?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, don't take the 61 applications we use as a lot, because it really isn't. There's a Wall Street Journal article this morning that I read that the average large company has 1,120 cloud applications, unique cloud applications in their portfolio. The key question is, those are the ones that are running. The IT department are only aware of 50% of them.
Right.
So when I did my cloud stack there of 61 companies, I tried to include the ones that we pay for, but I didn't include, obviously there's some employees that may have a customer using Dropbox or Box.net or this or eFolder. I mean, I didn't include a bunch of others that aren't specific to a certain, across the board case. So you could argue that our 61 is actually probably 122, because I'm only aware of 61 of them. So, one answer to your question is that it's a massive scale exercise, and trying to bring it all together is very difficult. You may only know about 50% of what's going on, because out in the public cloud, people are signing up for things every day. And you have no idea what the security is there, where the data is going, and all the different information around that. So that's one of the pieces, is that just the vast scope of the project or of the problem. The second thing is and this is what we've learned, is as a user, it may appear easy when you look at a cloud application through your browser, because it's been designed with a flat design and it looks pretty and everything's great. It doesn't look like those old developed. It's not COBOL. It's not a green screen. Even some of the early Microsoft Visual Basic stuff with everything crammed onto one screen, we've gone away from those like intense applications that try to show you everything on one screen. But the complexity now of, I use QuickBooks as an example. They did a complete redesign, which the software looks beautiful. But what used to take 1 click now takes 4. What used to be on your main screen isn't. And, there's a level of education and training that needs to be done for people to get the same value out of the software, where those 4 clicks need to happen. So that's the second example. The third is, as we've started to plug in all of these applications with each other, the level of data that we're, asking our teams to generate and the level of value, this is the productivity piece of it, is, 10 years ago, people were just getting into the sales funnel, how to take a customer from awareness to knowledge to preference to commitment to buy. And then all of a sudden that's been blown up now because each of those stages have 50 different variables in them, and perhaps, and this is an average number for the industry, 7 pieces of SaaS inside each of those stages. So you have 5 stages with 7 pieces of software. There's now 45 pieces of software that are driving a simple sales funnel, and that doesn't include your marketing funnel because there's 45 more applications there. So your marketing and sales team trying to explain to you how to get a customer aware of your product to buy it is now talking through 90 applications.
All right, so integration becomes a really important capability, and again, most SMBs won't have the technical capabilities to make this stuff work together, so you don't really get, and if it's not working together, if it's not talking to each other, if the workflow is not streamlined, then you don't have that productivity gain. So that's really,
right,
again, where it seems to me where the channel needs to invest in deep knowledge on these applications and can really build practice areas around integrating these different solutions so that the user actually benefits.
Absolutely. And by the way, the technical piece is one half of it. The other half is business model. If you go into your average small business, let's say with 20, 30 employees trying to do a marketing campaign to bring in more people into the shop, do you think they would be able to talk about a pipe walk down and conversions and all these types of things that are their business model type of or business type of discussions, and then obviously the technology, to be able to drive out those numbers and then manage those numbers and improve those numbers. So, for the first time in a while, the channel gets to really engage at a business level, business strategy, bringing industry best practices to the average small business that says, you may not be aware, and you may have implemented a marketing system or a sales system, but by doing that, you've now generated this level of visibility to all this information, and to get smarter about it and to be able to change course, you now understand levers and dials like you never did before. So perhaps we can help you on the business side, not only with consulting but some execution as well, in terms of driving them competitively to be better than perhaps somebody across the street. So again, the opportunities, and this isn't a linear thing, it's exponential when you start looking at all of the amount of SaaS that's getting plugged in, the integrations that are happening. But once that integration happens, there's a whole other can of worms that gets blown open by using this new power. And again, we're really back at the forefront of this. Not a lot of small or medium companies are tapping into at least 10 or 20% of the power that these applications have.
Right. There's a question from the floor here. Gloria says, there's also a gap around cost for the flower shops of the world, meaning the companies under 20 users. There aren't good solutions for this market. Can you speak to this? I mean, I don't know. Do you agree with that, first of all? And is there a fit problem for a lot of these applications in small businesses?
There definitely is. So I absolutely agree with the comment. And the reason I agree is, small business isn't just broken up into 28 industries. Small business is probably broken up into thousands of subsegments of those 28 industries. And if we were to talk about the flower shop, the average subsegment, and let's just keep talking flower shop to make it easy, somebody in the flower shop industry, and when I say somebody, there's probably 2 or 3 people who have taken their experience in the flower shop industry and built some software to help them manage it. This is the PSA market for flower shops. I'll say that, Bob at Autotask and ConnectWise and TigerPaw, many of them were frustrated MSPs that built a better mousetrap to do what they needed to do every day. And in that case, it was ticketing and the financials and CRM and building all that stuff together. But when you're in a flower shop, you're probably wondering about the freshness of the flowers and the sales velocity of roses around Valentine's Day. And I mean, there's things that I have no idea about. You can just ask my wife. I know little about flowers. But if you're one of those people who built the software package around it, you've probably plugged in a lot of what you think are the holes around using generic software to run your flower shop. If you tried to use QuickBooks to run a flower shop, it would be painful. You'd have to highly customize it, and it wouldn't really help you run your business effectively. So you'd want to use one of these PSAs built directly for you, and when you went to your trade show, annual trade show, with all the other flower shop owners in America, there would be vendors there trying to sell you software to better run your shop. And the same goes for every kind of shop, but these pieces of software, and I think this gets to the point of the question, they are pretty rudimentary. They're not, these aren't mini Salesforce.coms. And by the way, they're not Autotasks or ConnectWises. I mean, these are, usually somebody in their basement who's written this piece of code and trying to sell it for whatever cost, per month that they could get from clients. And they kind of keep it updated, and it's probably not that secure, and it's probably not that robust. But most important, it's probably not connected to Salesforce.com or even QuickBooks or some of these, higher end applications. And if it is, it could be, it could break every month and everything else. So they're dealing with software that, seems like it would help them run their business better and seems to be highly focused on them, but it might not be a high quality way to run the business. So as somebody that wanted to help this flower shop as an IT consultant or a service firm, perhaps using that piece of software isn't the best idea. Maybe there's a better one that they should be using in that industry, sub-industry, or perhaps there's a better way to use some of the more robust tools to pull it together. But again, that's not up for the flower shop to decide. They need help to do that. Much like they don't know how to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's integrating what's been selected, if it was the right choice, but even before that, I mean, I think where the channel can really deliver a ton of expertise and value is having a deep vertical expertise in the markets you serve, and then helping your clientele make those right decisions. Because if you make the wrong decision, backing out of it's a very costly endeavor in most cases, and you want to make it the right decision. So, and it requires a lot of experience and expertise to know what's the right fit, which application is going to meet the needs of that particular flower shop, or pick your industry category.
Right. And we all know that flower shop, by the way, is not going to spend hundreds of dollars per hour and allow you to run up, $100,000 in services. I mean, their cap might be a couple $1,000s a month in terms of hardware, software, and services to keep their business running, because that's all they've got from a profit margin point of view. They don't see, a potential future of, selling 50% more because there's better processes and software and services. They're just stuck with what they have today, knowing they need to do it, but, trying to rub pennies together to go get it happening. And that's one of the big challenges. So I've kind of segued here in terms of, we've been talking about cloud application, integration consultants, and service providers, are the IT department in small and medium business. This is a little bit of a transformation, because if you go back 10, 15 years, especially to companies that I was selling, ThinkPads and desktops and servers to, it was really the company that sold them those things, serviced them, and kept everything kind of running. It's the person on call that that was the IT department. Over the last 10 years, some really smart companies have figured out how to sell that as a monthly service and be predictable for that business, and be profitable in terms of doing that. But what's happened today is the first two words. How could Salesforce.com, or at least their tech support crew, be part of my IT department? How could integration consultants? And I spent a lot of time last year, and I went to a lot of shows that were outside of our channel industry. I went to Marketo, I went to Pardot, I went to Acton, I went to Eloqua, I went to some of these lines of business shows, and I looked at who their channel partners were. And this is where the millennials are. A lot of these people are very young. They're very good at what they do. Because in the case of marketing, which I just used as an example, they're good marketers. They understand software marketing automation, lead nurturing. They understand how to do lead scoring. I mean, they're smart people in terms of what they do. A lot of them wear skinny jeans, and they're highly fashionable, and these are the partners. And because I've been around the channel so long, I was shocked that I didn't see any faces that I recognized at those shows. And these are what I'll call integration consultants. So if you think that these people are your IT department, you're mistaken. So they're going to help you perhaps get, let's say, Marketo hooked up to your Salesforce and do some sort of marketing programs. But if you think they understand security, if you think they understand networking, if they understand hardware, if they understand the foundational stuff, they absolutely don't. Their hardware knowledge goes to their iPhone and their MacBook. And by the way, if something breaks, they go to the Genius Bar. That's their level of knowledge on hardware. Their level of knowledge on security is just reading about breaches that have happened in the last couple of weeks and to warn you that security is a big thing. But they don't understand compliance or legal or any of the things underneath security. So this is what's dangerous in a lot of these small businesses, trusting really people as an IT department that aren't skilled to be the IT department. And this is what I'm a little bit fearful of when this 37% goes to 78%, is that many companies are going to trust people to take them there that only have a line of business or a very thin skill set in a certain area, and not like most of us have the more general knowledge and skill set to make sure that all of the different important things are being taken care of as you make those moves. So I've included a couple of spending categories here that are that are large at this point in time. And if I look internally here, we don't have a hardware support person. Partially, I used to be in the help desk, so I do a little bit of running around. But for most people, if they have a Mac, we just send them back to the Genius Bar to get something fixed. And those services, because we're 100% cloud, I don't even think about them. They're not part of my budget. They're not, it's not something that would concern me, which is different than maybe 5 or 10 years ago we started the company. But the things up top are the things I think about every day in terms of help. Who are we asking to help us get from point A to point B? And do they have the skills necessary beyond their specialty to get us there? Okay, so one stat I just brought from Intuit, who happens to build QuickBooks and Quicken. But what are the owners actually doing? The one is, the number one is, back office work, bookkeeping, invoicing, accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, kind of all the plumbing inside the business. Over half of them are using it to manage relationships with clients. About half of them are communicating with employees and business partners. And then about a third of them are using it to, find new customers and build awareness and press and PR and branding and other types of things. So, what this basically boils down to me for is the different stages of the stack that I talked about. You have to have a marketing, a sales, a financial, an operations, HR. There's 10 lines of business, and there's leaders in each of those areas within the cloud stack area that are moving. So again, building a company end to end, It's becoming an expert in those lines of business, as well as the different applications and how they work with each other. So I think I've been leading to this chart all along, which would be my advice, is developing the right skill set for the cloud. Understanding it can be highly profitable and a really good investment. Where do you start hiring? What kind of resumes do you want to look for? What kind of skills do you want to build for yourself or your current team? To start taking advantage of those profit areas. It breaks it in. CompTIA did a good job here. Again, breaking it into 4. Build is part of that. Planning, consulting type of work that goes in before applications start coming in. Providing the provisioning as well as the purchasing and the actual transactional piece of it to bring the software in, which could be white labeling, hosting, reselling, aggregating, brokering, all kinds of things, but depending on what kind of business model to bring that software into that client. But then the fun starts, the enabling piece of it all, obviously getting it deployed, integrated and customized to work for them in their environment. The one thing that I would take out of this model that in my own personal experience is the word integrate really doesn't fit into number 3. It actually fits across all 4. Because we don't buy a piece of software unless we've already answered the question of whether it's going to integrate with 61 other pieces of software that we have. We don't provision a piece of software and then integrate it. We do it at the same time. So when it's coming in, it's plugged in from day 1, and we don't wait to do that. And then obviously when we're managing and supporting it, further integrations are happening, and we're pushing the envelope harder on that cross-application integration than ever. So it's the most important word for me on this chart. It fits in every 4 category. But as you're building skills, you got to make sure that you can take a customer from where they are today, which might be just dabbling, to full cloud integration, and make sure that you can not only participate but obviously profit on each of the stages along the way. Underneath this, obviously, there's, depending on the industry, there can be a ton of compliance work. Think about healthcare, you think about the financial industry, there could be legal work, there's geographic pieces to this that are important. There's segment pieces of this that are important depending on the size of customer. So there's a lot of variables here that you can really hone in on and specialize in. And if you want to take your geography and even expand your business beyond your city, state, or even beyond the country, you could become a global specialist in a very narrow niche area. And if you think of an industry like healthcare, you think of a vertical like healthcare, you think of a line of business like HR, and you get detailed into HIPAA, high-tech compliance, and building a couple of these applications together. And again, there's thousands of applications that touch that area. If you build a certain unique set of skills, you'll find that you might be able to help a couple of hospitals and ambulatory care centers locally, but your skills then translate on a national scale and perhaps even on an international scale. As somebody who's been through that can write the book on it, and even those vendors who sell that software may look to you every time there's that niche comes up in their own opportunities. And this is opportunity level that the channel has never seen before. The permutations and combinations make your mind go dizzy in terms of the ways that not only you can specialize and expand your region of sales, but also the way you can put your own IP. Don't be afraid of adding your own piece of software to this or your own piece of intellectual property in this. And we're seeing another trend where a lot of business partners are creating their own companies on the side that specialize in that area, and they're becoming their own vendors looking for channel partners. It's kind of a full circle type of thing. Okay, and kind of as I close off here, and I know it's 15 minutes before the hour, we want to save some time, obviously, for Ted to walk through the eFolder piece, really cool piece, but also for some questions. So the last chart I really have is on the really the cloud application usage. So if you're going to define that specialty that I just talked about, the crosshairs between industry and product specialty and everything else, you start to look at what's the most popular. And whether it's Office 365, email, analytics, big data, collaboration, CRM, I talked about marketing, HR, try to pick an area that obviously is popular, but that you can really, grab a leadership position in and know where the dollars are being spent. Okay, Ted, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, Jay, thanks a lot. So what I want to do is, first of all, remind everyone, we always try to end on time, so we have a couple minutes more for questions. But what I want to do is just kind of end with a couple thoughts on, I think the slide Jay just showed, it shows those software categories that have already become quite broadly adopted by small and medium businesses and large enterprises. And certainly email and the productivity suites is a market that is very fast moving. I think if you listen to Microsoft's quarterly financial announcements every quarter, the highlight of every quarter these days now is the adoption of Office 365, the rate, the size, the way that market's growing. And I think if you just think about kind of today's discussion, really the genesis of inviting Jay was to really, spark a conversation around cloud adoption and really demonstrate that as an MSP today, you've really got to come to terms with, okay, which of those boxes on that matrix are you going to really focus on and specialize in, and how are we going to take all of this wonderful recurring revenue, recurring cash flow, and profit type business models of the MSP business model into the cloud-based world. And part of the answer is what one of eFolder's products, which is eFolder Cloud Finder, which is a cloud-to-cloud backup solution that allows an MSP to come in and add backup and recovery and full-text search and indexing across common SaaS applications. And the two we really focus on today is Google Apps for Work and Office 365. So it's called Cloud Finder, and so I just want to make a couple comments on what Cloud Finder does, and then get to your questions. But Cloud Finder, what it allows an MSP to do, so in our experience, most MSPs today, what we see is that the vast majority of your clientele, in most cases, will still have on-premises Exchange. Or you may have started to migrate some of your clients, but in most cases what we see is that the penetration rate of Office 365 or a hosted mail solution that's not on-prem is maybe around, say, 10 to 30% in most MSPs today. And what you have to realize is as you move these workloads from on-prem to the cloud, data loss doesn't go away. Data loss is still a reality. The core application itself will be more resilient. There'll be less downtime. There'll be less incidents that are sparked by traditional problems that were caused on premises. However, the user is still the user. Admins are still admins. Mistakes are still made. Software conflicts and integration errors still occur. User accounts get deleted when employees come and go. Adds, moves, and changes can lead to data loss if you're not careful. So none of these challenges around data loss go away, and really in our experience there's really a false sense of security in many regards with a lot of cloud-based applications. A lot of small businesses adopt Office 365 today, and they don't realize that if they have any of the small business versions of Office 365, there's no email archiving, there's no long data retention capabilities for your your cloud-based documentation, your SharePoint Online documents. There's no long-term retention for all of that content. So data loss is still a big reality, even with cloud-based applications. And so what you can do today as you migrate clients to Office 365 or to Google Apps is you can layer in and add eFolder Cloud Finder, which takes all of that content, backs it up, moves it to a redundant second site, a tamper-proof safe haven for all of your clients' content. All of it is encrypted. And then it gives you the ability as the MSP to really deliver a managed application. As we talked about today, just because you've moved Exchange to Office 365 doesn't mean complexity goes away. It doesn't mean security and compliance is no longer a concern. It doesn't mean you no longer have adds, moves, and changes. It doesn't mean you don't have to manage users and the mistakes that they're going to make. All that stuff's still going to happen. The question is, do you have a robust tool set to provide backup, restore, and rapid recovery capabilities? And that's what Cloud Finder does, is all of the data gets backed up, it gets full text indexed, so then you as the administrator, or if the client has a highly credentialed administrator that's on staff, you or they can search through all of that content and do rapid restores, no matter what the challenge. If there's an internal investigation because of an employment, an HR-related matter, you can do, full text searching of all of the content repository, the email, the attachments, the Office documents, the SharePoint online documents, all of it. You can full text search it. And if you need to do a recovery, you have really rich recovery options. You can restore whole mailboxes. You can restore whole mail repositories to different users. You can export all of the content for, say, a legal discovery request. You have really rich options. And so Cloud Finder allows MSPs to manage these applications, and adding in backup and restore and full text search of all of this content is kind of one pillar of being able to deliver a cloud-based managed service. Our vision for Cloud Finder is over time to add literally dozens of applications. As we've seen, this app ecosystem is enormous. The data loss risks in many of these applications don't go away just because the workload is running in the cloud. And there's even more complexity. So software conflicts, software overwriting other data, integration errors, all of these are grim realities even in the cloud. And so best practices dictate that you have security, compliance, and the same good best practices we've traditionally had with on-premises applications to back those up and have a plan B if something does go awry. So I'm not going to go into great detail on Cloud Finder today. I just wanted to end with that as, the idea that this is one set of software and cloud services that eFolder is providing the MSP community for you to go out and tackle this opportunity that Jay's presented for us today. And so with that, let me just check our time, see how we're doing. So we've got about 7 minutes for questions. I will mention just before we do that if you do want to try out Cloud Finder, please log on to the eFolder website and just go to Cloud Finder, and then you can execute a free trial right online. But let's go to your questions. We've got a couple minutes here. So Kirster just wants to know, can we get access to the presentations after the webinar? Yes, a recorded version of today's presentation will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also be circulating the slides and the recorded WMV recorded version of today's content via email to those who attended and registered. So let's go to your questions. Don't be shy. Give it another couple seconds here. So Jay, let me ask you. I mean, when you are talking to MSPs today, who's really succeeding with this transition, and how are they going about doing it? Because I think what occurs to me when we were especially looking at that matrix of all the choices that need to be made today, I think there's kind of I feel there's a lot of MSPs that are paralyzed and not making kind of the strict choices on where they're going to focus. When you talk to successful MSPs who are making this transition, how are they doing it?
It's a good question, and number one, a lot of the successful ones I've talked to really focused on their business model first. And the interesting thing is MSPs are so much further ahead because they've, many of them have transitioned their business model to be a recurring revenue subscription-based business model. And what you're doing is you're basically helping customers do the same thing. They're moving into much more of an operational stage as opposed to a capital or CapEx intensive stage. So a lot of successful MSPs have actually used their own experience, and some of it was really painful, moving from break fix or moving from hardware sales to being an MSP. And they use some of their own skills and pain points and lessons learned to help customers make the transition. I did see a stat where last year only 11% of small businesses got outside help, to start making this transition, and this year it's 17%. So I think that just from a customer point of view, there's more openness to ask for help now. Perhaps it was what you said earlier, is maybe this was easy and everybody thought it was just a couple of clicks of the mouse, but it gets hard. And I think what we're seeing now is some of the small businesses who may have invested in some cloud see that they're not getting a return from it, and are looking for outside help. So using your own experience and obviously getting skilled in those 4 buckets really is from the planning stage right through the management stage is where the success has been seen.
Yeah, and I think the other trend I'm seeing is, I think one thing that becomes rather obvious because of the kind of the tyranny of choice is that revisiting your vertical expertise will reap huge dividends. I think in a cloud-centric world, really mastering the integration points between these various applications is critical. We kind of come back to our flower shop example. I mean, whether it's flower shops or kind of maybe retail as a category, I think having a vertical focus and making the tough choices about what you're not going to do is reaping huge dividends for people, because if you can get really deep expertise on the line of business applications for those markets, and then how they connect and integrate with the horizontal applications, and how you can really solve that integration problem and deliver the business results and the productivity improvements for the business owner, then I think you really solidify your position, and it doesn't become a matter of, are we talking on-premises or the cloud. It's computing, it's software, it's workflows, and it's about productivity and serving customers and collecting revenue and supporting them. So I think that's another thing that I'm seeing kind of a renewed focus by the more successful organizations around verticals.
Yeah, and the other thing I didn't mention is something that goes back almost 30 years in the channel is this idea of owning the customer. Owning them. You never wanted to give up a category. You kind of wanted to own them from all technology standpoint. The same thing happens in the cloud. One of the biggest threats to the channel is having these consultants or integration specialists come in and start to replace some of the overall IT part of that customer. And I said that the broad level of skills is important. So what successful MSPs are doing, they're actually partnering with some of these specialists. Because we go back to the marketing example, if you're bringing in one of these people that is a Marketo expert and is an absolute ninja in that area, and they can tune up the system, but again, you're bringing them in and you're making sure that everything they do is obviously robust and secure and has the entire infrastructure in mind, that they're not breaking anything as they do it. That's an important piece, and owning that customer is critical. So we had 50% of channel partners reported that they lost a sale to one of these non-traditional IT solution providers. And I think that's going to increase, and customers aren't going to know the difference. They just assume they're bringing in expertise, and they don't know all of the different variables that go with that expertise, and the threat of perhaps something going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's really two-pronged. It's not just having rock solid customer ownership or client ownership. It's at the same time recognizing that you need a partnering strategy, because you won't have the expertise in every single app, and so you need to build those relationships and the business interactions and the models to actually partner with other organizations who can kind of bring in that outside expertise, so you can deal with them as a friend rather than a foe, to again solidify that account control. So
Absolutely.
with that, I'm just looking at the clock. We're at the top of the hour. We should end on time. I want to first of all thank Jay McBain from ChannelEyes for the great insights and information he shared with us today. So Jay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
And for all of the eFolder partners who joined us, hopefully you found this informative. This is the eFolder Expert Series, and this is Ted Hulsy with eFolder. We're signing off today. Thanks a lot for joining us, everybody. Take care now.